Senegal are back where they belong at the World Cup, looking to improve upon that 2002 famous finish where they reached the quarterfinals after beating France in their first match. Who have they got first this time? Guess who? It's France. But is this the best African team to go to a World Cup? Let's get into it. Hello, my name is Ali Howarth. I'm an African football journalist, and it has been one of the privileges of my football journalism career watching the evolution of this Senegalese team. This team that, in 2018, 2019 was the kind of the nearly team, the bridesmaids. They became the first ever team in World Cup history to be knocked out on fair play when they were in that group with Colombia and Poland and Japan, when they had 4 points, three of the teams with 4 points, and they had a couple too many yellow cards, which is unbelievably harsh. They then got to the final of the AFCON in 2019, losing by one very deflected goal to Algeria. But since then, they have just taken strides to become stronger and stronger and stronger. They won the AFCON in 2022, 2021, depending on how you count AFCON years. They reached the knockouts for the first time in 20 years in Qatar without their best player, Sadio Mane. And now in 2025, 2026, they have won the AFCON, appeals pending, and they come in to the World Cup looking as strong as ever. And I will be as bold to say that in my lifetime of watching football, this is the strongest team that Africa has ever put forward into a World Cup. Now, hear me out. I'm not saying it's the most talented. I think there are Nigerians among us, Ghanaians among us, Moroccans among us, Cameroonians among us, Ivorians among us, who would challenge that and say we've had better teams at the World Cup. And I wouldn't argue that. I don't know if this is necessarily the most talented African nation going to the World Cup. I would even say it might not even be the most talented African nation going to this World Cup. I think Ivorians and the Moroccans might have something to say about this. But this team is the best team, and I mean team. It is the most complete team. I would argue one of the most complete teams, if not the most complete team in the world going to the World Cup. Again, I'm not saying the best. They're the most complete. There is not a weak position in this team. From front to back, there is talent. From front to back, there is experience. From front to back, there is youth, there is vibrancy, and they have depth in every single position. You take any one of these players out of this team, I don't care if it's Kalidou Koulibaly, I don't care if it's Sadio Mane, I don't care if it's Pape Gueye, all right? Any of their most important players, you take them out, another one steps in. Mamadou Sarr will step in, Habib Diarra will step in, Ibrahim Mbaye will step in, Lamine Camara will step in. This team is the most complete team an African nation has ever put forward. And I think this is a team that for the first time, I would say, again, in my living memory, that an African team goes into a World Cup with a genuine chance of winning it. Again, hear me out. I don't think they will win it. I don't think they're that good. But I think that winning it is not beyond the realms of possibility. Pape Thiaw, a couple of weeks ago, in the build-up to the World Cup, said that if even for a second I doubted that I could win the World Cup with Senegal, then I would step aside. He also was filmed before the World Cup, kind of in a behind-the-scenes film, speaking to his staff and looking at this list of players that could go to the World Cup, and him almost giggling. Now, Pape Thiaw's a very serious man, particularly in press conferences and things. He was pretty much giggling and saying to himself, "I've never seen a team this good from Senegal. We've never had anything like this." And I think that is spot on. I think this team is incredibly strong. I think it is one of the best teams I've ever seen on the African continent, and I think they have the chance that at least get to the quarterfinals. They, for me, are now in the conversation of all these elite teams that you expect them to get through, you expect them to go do well, and then it comes to the question of can they get it done against the elite teams in the quarterfinals. But I think anything less than the quarterfinals, Senegal will be incredibly disappointed. So why is Senegal such a complete team? Why are they so good, right? I think there's a few answers to that. I think there's a few, personnel-wise. I think there's a few structure-wise. And I think there's X factor things that Senegal have. So in terms of the players, look, Senegal have mastered the art of producing talent, both at home and abroad. They managed to blend this kind of capacity for attracting players from the diaspora, particularly France, who are obviously coming through the biggest football talent factory there exists in the world, which is Paris. as well as developing the very best in Senegal. Senegal, by all rights, in terms of population, financial investment, kind of the financial muscle as a country, have no right to be the best team in Africa. When you compare them to population-wise and finances-wise to countries like Morocco, Egypt, Algeria, Nigeria, Ethiopia, South Africa, Senegal should not be anywhere near where they are, but they have invested very, very well, and they've invested mainly into these elite academies, whether it's Generation Foot, Diam Bars, and they have some of the best academies in Africa. And these academies have very good connections and pathways to going to Europe. The best obvious example being Generation Foot, the academy that produced the likes of Sadio Mane, as well as Lamine Camara, who have a connection with Metz. So the players like Camara, like Mane, can go straight from Generation Foot to Metz. There's a pathway there. Now, we can have a conversation about whether that's kind of extraction and colonialism. And we'll have that conversation at some point. But what that has allowed is this nation to develop talent at a rate that no other nation can per capita in Africa, right? That no other nation can compete in terms of the amount of talent that Senegal can generate. Structurally, I think there's a few things that Senegal do that have been trailblazers in many ways, to a point. The first is embracing Senegalese coaches. Aliou Cissé was given the reins in 2015, and for a few years we had seen the Senegalese side that had a lot of talent. You know, you had someone called Sadio Mane coming through. You had players like Pape Cissé, Demba Ba. You know, a lot of very good players, but had been struggling. And the Senegalese Federation said, look, we're going to give you the reins and we're going to give you time. And we're going to invest in you. We're going to put along more tactically minded coaches around you, but you're going to be the figurehead. That has paid off, right? He won the AFCON, got them to 2 World Cups, got them to another AFCON final. And that is really a trailblazing sense in the sense that up to that point, it was kind of rare for nations to hire their own coaches, particularly at the top level, to coach them. There was a sense that in order to kind of break through to the very top, you had to bring in a French coach, you had to bring a Yugoslavian coach, you had to bring in a Portuguese coach. Senegal showed that there's a different path, and they showed that beyond Cissé, right? Because when Cissé left, there's this sense that this is the country's greatest ever coach. He's handed them their first ever AFCON title. Where are we going to go from there? Like Morocco, like some of these other nations that have really stepped up, the path was there for the next guy. Pape Thiaw steps in. The man who is in charge of their CHAN winning side in 2022, who's seen as already the heir apparent to this team in the same way that, you know, at Algeria you had Jamal Belmadi. You have, you know, Mohamed Wahbi at Morocco coming through straight after Walid Regragui. These other nations have looked to Senegal and said, this is how you do it. And Senegal, for me, have been the trailblazers of that. They've been the ones who've said, this is how you do it. There's a few other things that I think Senegal really play into is their identity. So I think for me the best example is the use of El Hadj Diouf. So El Hadj Diouf has this kind of dual reputation. So in Senegal and in much of Africa, he is a legend, right? He was the architect, along with Papa Bouba Diop, Kalidou Fadiga, and a few others of that great 2002 team. That team that made Senegalese people dream, that made Africans dream about what they could do at the World Cup, beat France on the opening day, were phenomenal. He has the second reputation in Europe that he is this party animal, that he doesn't take his football seriously, that he has attitude problems, that he is not a serious professional. Both of those are kind of true, right? He is simultaneously a party animal. He loves his drink. He loves to have a great time. And he is a legend. And so what have Senegal done? You know, for a lot of countries, I think most countries in the world, they would do one of two things. He would come in as a coach, and people would be very excited, and then he'd be exposed as a terrible coach and fail. Or they would say, keep him away from this national team. We don't want anything to do with him because he's not a professional. He's a joker, you know, let him do his own thing. Senegal have found a middle way. So they hire him and Kalidou Fadiga in official capacities as mentors for this team. So next time you're watching Senegal, if you're there live in particular, or even on TV, you can sometimes see it, you'll see in the warm-up, particularly for training, that Diouf and Fadiga, but particularly Diouf, are kind of involved in the warm-up. They're there playing with the players, they're having a laugh, they're joking, they're doing the keepy-uppies, they're going for a jog. Then once training starts, they step off, they get to the side, and the coaches take on charge. These players have been able to relax a lot of the young players because they've been there and done it, so they can kind of give advice, they kind of be role models, they can, you know, have a laugh, take the kind of sting out of the tense pressure that a lot of these players are. They can give very good advice, i.e. when Sadio Mane was looking for someone for advice for what to do during the AFCON final, El Hadj Diouf was the one who was telling him what to do, giving him advice, saying like what we need to do. and they can kind of they can bring that kind of wisdom without impacting any of the coaching, right? So I think Senegal have done that brilliantly. They've managed to they managed to perfect what other African nations are trying to do, whilst also innovating themselves. But that's kind of, for me, why they've done so well. Pap Chow is a fantastic manager. They've reared him to be into this position. Let's get into the team and why I think this is the best team that Africa has to offer. And again, I don't say talent, I say team, because I think that's what these guys have been able to do so well. So this is the squad, right? And right through this squad, there is immense talent, right? And there's immense experience, right? Kalidou Koulibaly, Edouard Mendy, Idrissa Gana Gueye, Sadio Mane. That is the spine of the team that won the 2019 AFCON, that has been to their third World Cup now, that have so much experience and are still delivering, right? None of them have let this nation down in any real meaningful sense. But then you have this great, huge amount of talent, right? So Kalidou Koulibaly and Moussa Niakhaté are the two starting centre-backs for Senegal. Koulibaly gets injured and then gets suspended for the final after picking up a second yellow card at the AFCON. Mamadou Sarr, who has been completely undervalued by Chelsea, being played at right back, thrown under the bus, he steps into the semi-final of the AFCON for his first minutes of any substance, rather, and he is brilliant. He then has to start that final against Morocco and is brilliant. 20 years old, such a young guy, right? Midfield, Idrissa Gana Gueye, in his mid to late 30s, still going, alongside Pape Gueye, who for me is the most underrated player in this team. He's the one who scored that banger in the AFCON final. He scored a brace against Senegal brace for Senegal against Sudan in the round of 16 when they were losing. It was voted La Liga's best African player this season with Villarreal, who came third in La Liga, one of their most important players. He's fantastic, and he's got this brilliant understanding with Idrissa Gana Gueye. The fact that he starts and that Idrissa Gana Gueye starts is crazy, because Lamine Camara is the golden boy of Senegal, right? Plays at Monaco, was the star of their under-20 team, star of their Chan team. He has been the heir apparent to Sadio Mane for a long, long time. He can't get in this team. Habib Diarra can't get in this team. Plays for Sunderland regularly. Pape Matar at Spurs can't get into this team, right? These are the kind of depth they have. And then forward, it's Sadio Mane surrounded by Iliman Ndiaye, who's currently rated at 80 million euros by Everton. Unbelievable ball carrier, kind of guy who can create magic from nothing. As then you've got on the other wing Ismaila Sarr, searing pace, Crystal Palace's best player of the season, just won the Conference League, won the FA Cup last season, brilliant forward, all behind Nicholas Jackson. Sometimes the Sheriff Ndiaye, Baba Dieng can be involved. Nicholas Jackson, I love Nicholas Jackson. I know he comes in for a lot of abuse, and he is a slightly comical player, doesn't often do himself any favors, but his movement and his link-up play are invaluable. I think there's a reason why Cole Palmer's had a terrible season at Chelsea. Amidst all the other nonsense at Chelsea, a huge part of it is because none of the forwards who replaced Jackson have the kind of movement and have the way to create space for Cole Palmer that Jackson did, and the way that he creates space for Sadio Mane, who's turned into this kind of creative, classy number 10. Which is, again, an incredible transformation for him when he was, for much of his career, this blisteringly fast winger who sometimes lacked a bit of quality. He's now that kind of cultured number 10, but he still is an incredibly hard-working player. In a World Cup where you have aging stars like Riyad Mahrez, Neymar, Messi, Ronaldo, Salah, players who, even if they provide moments of magic and moments of brilliance, are often a burden to their team. Sadio Mane is not that. He played 120 minutes of the AFCON final. His back heel was the kind of pass that opened up Morocco's defense for that final goal that they scored. He had 3 assists at the AFCON. Look, I was a hater. When I watched them lose 2-0 to Brazil in October at the Emirates, I made a video saying that Sadio Mane needs to retire. And I thought that he might be kind of the difference between Senegal winning or losing the AFCON. And it turns out he was, but not in the way that I thought, because he was the man who instigated that win. So this is the kind of depth that Senegal are playing with. This is the kind of team that Senegal are playing with. I'll show you my starting line. I've already pretty much mentioned the whole team. Again, El Hadji Malick Diouf, was really came to the fore when he was still playing in the Czech Republic, but was one of the architects of taking apart England in that 3-1 win when they beat them last summer in Nottingham. Thomas Tuchel's first loss as the England coach. He now is at West Ham. He's had a great season at West Ham. He wasn't starting at the beginning of this AFCON, because Ismail Jakobs was starting and had a brilliant first couple games. El Hadji Malick Diouf comes in and is even better, right? Crepin Diatta has proven me wrong time and time again with both his leadership and his ability as a right back to step up, right? But even if he doesn't play, Anton Mendy is sitting in the sidelines waiting. This team just has so much depth, and they don't have a weak point. And that's what I mean, is while, yes, you might look at Cote d'Ivoire and say it's more talented, same with Morocco, there is no weakness here. There are no question marks, right? Maybe Kalidou Koulibaly is the only question mark, but if he doesn't play, Mamadou Sarr just slots in, and he slotted in perfectly. There are no question marks about this team. At the AFCON, they ranked among the top 2 for possession, goals scored, chances created, XG, XG against per 90, because obviously they played a lot more minutes than a lot of other countries, and the least goals conceded and most clean sheets. Even they had conceded the joint least goals with Morocco too, even though those 2 teams reached the final. So they played more games than anyone else except for the semi-finalists and the finalists. They conceded only 2 goals. One was a wonder goal against Sudan, and one was a bit of a kind of chaotic, scrappy, like kind of not unfair goal, but a strange goal from DRC. So they are just so good at playing dominating football whilst being defensively solid. And as they showed against England last summer, they're so super happy to play on the break. They can also just defensively soak it up and play on the counter. When they have, a ball carrier like Ndiaye, yes, Mane doesn't have the pace he once did, but he still kind of has the fitness. And that's what I love about him, is he doesn't make the rest of his team worse by still playing in the way that some of these other stars who are aging do. Now, the other player I want to speak about, who I think says so much about this team, is this kid, Ibrahim Mbaye. He is 18 years old. He is one of the crown jewels of PSG's academy. He has played 42 times for PSG in the last 2 seasons, despite being only 18. He is their youngest ever player, breaking a record that Warren Zaire-Emery set. Now, bear in mind, Warren Zaire-Emery is kind of known for being the greatest young talent in the world, alongside the likes of Lamine Yamal. Ibrahim Mbaye broke his record for being the youngest player. When he was 17, he declared to play for Senegal. And I think that is such a statement for Senegal's power, because he was eligible to play for Morocco as well, and France. And there's been this narrative around African nations that oftentimes when they recruit players from the diaspora, they're players who wanted to play for their country birth, and then when they were rejected, came and played for their African nation. A great example, and some of those players have done really badly, some of those players have done very well. Ademola Lookman is a great example. Didn't want to play for Nigeria, wanted to play for England, couldn't play for England, has gone on to have a brilliant career with Nigeria. The fact that Ibrahim Mbaye didn't even wait for France, said, I want to play for Senegal. I'm 17 and I'm rejecting both Morocco and France to play for Senegal. He made his debut against Brazil in that game that I watched. He is fearless, and he's gone. I think it's such a statement to the power of Senegal that they can attract these players. And that's why, for me, oftentimes I look at it and I say, these guys are getting it right behind the scenes, because they're able to attract these kind of players. And they are able to reject other players. So Malang Sarr, who is one who did reject Senegal in hopes of getting called up to France, was arguably the best centre-back in Ligue 1 this season with Lens. He then said, I wanted to play for Senegal, and Senegal said, no, thank you. We're not taking you to the World Cup. You haven't been a part of this team. There is no other team in Africa that could say that to a player like that, of that quality. There is no other. And the reason I know is because the only country that could come close to that is Morocco. And they did that with Issa Diop, who previously said he didn't want to play for Morocco. And then Morocco took him. Senegal don't need to do that because they've got this depth, because they've got a team that is so strong in every position. So let's get on to their World Cup, because, there's the saying that Jesus gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers. And this is certainly true for Senegal, because they, for me, are in the group of death. They are in the most difficult group of the World Cup. I mean, you say, okay, take out Iraq, aren't a terrible team, a very good coach in Graham Arnold. This is the best 1, 2, 3 of any group at this World Cup, without a doubt. You have France, who are the favorites for the World Cup. Obviously, reached back-to-back finals. Have a team like no other team. Have more players than any other team. You can just go on eulogizing about this team. Then they have Norway, who obviously smashed Italy in World Cup qualifying to knock them out, and have Erling Haaland, who's been phenomenal for them. A brilliant attack, Martin Odegaard, etc., etc. So Senegal are an incredibly tough group, right? And they start off with the 2 tough matches, right? I'm very jealous of Norway, who get that first game against Iraq. If they win that, they're in such a strong position against Senegal. But again, any other African nation, I look at this group, I say you're coming third, maybe second. Senegal are the exception. Yes, France are going to be favorites for this, but Senegal, again, have the capacity to play on the break, have the resolve to do that, have the depth to do that, and have the mentality to do that, to beat France. And that's why I think that they're in a position where actually they can get out of this group. Now, do I think they'll come first? No. Do I think they'll come second? Potentially not. Look, Norway are a very good team, but I think what we have to look at is Senegal in terms of getting to the quarterfinals, right? I think the one thing that they have gotten lucky in terms of their draw is they are in one of those good positions where if they come second, they're playing another second place teams. Kind of the luck of the draw in terms of who's playing who as a second runners up. Just part of one of the flaws of this tournament. If they come first, or if they come second rather, they will play second in Group E. Group E is Germany, Cote d'Ivoire, Ecuador, and Curacao. Okay? Yes, Cote d'Ivoire beat them in the 2023 AFCON, but I think Senegal would fancy themselves against Cote d'Ivoire. Of course they would. And they beat Ecuador in 2022 at the World Cup. I think both teams have improved since then, but I think Senegal have improved even more than Ecuador. So you would have them as favorites for both those games, right? If they win their group, then we get into playing like one of these third place teams. So there's no point in kind of chit-chatting about who they'll play. But I think they're in a very, very strong position, whether they come top of their group or they come second. Because if they come top, they'll then play, I believe they'll play Germany in the round of 16. So playing Germany for a spot in the quarterfinal, yes, that's going to be tough. Again, assuming these teams come where they are. If they come second and they have to beat Cote d'Ivoire or Ecuador, I think they then will play whoever comes first in Morocco's group. So again, Brazil or Morocco. And I think against both these teams, yes, I watched them get really taken apart by Brazil in October. I would say a couple things on that game. One, it was a friendly and they were trying out a lot of players. So Antoine Mendy came in, didn't have a great game. They hadn't quite nailed this starting lineup. Sadio Mane was really off it. And Brazil has some players there that are not the World Cup. I think Estevao was fantastic at that game, and I think that was actually Brazil's best ever match they played under Carlo Ancelotti. Certainly a lot of the Brazilian journalists I was with at the time said so. So again, you kind of say, okay, look, once it gets to the round of 16, Senegal are at a stage where it's like, okay, you're playing the very best. You can win or you can lose. But of all the African teams going up against these major European teams, going up against these major South American teams, I think Morocco are brilliant, but I think they are not as complete a team as Senegal. I think they're more of a team in transition, whereas this Senegal team are mastering the art of being fantastic whilst transitioning. And that's why, for me, I think this Senegal team could do something special at this World Cup. Whether that's a semi-final, final, winning it, whatever it is, this Senegal team has what it takes to do something special.